It's funny, isn't it? Women consistently painted as the domestic icons. Men are supposed to be the rulers. Women are supposed to stay home. Silent supporters, always under the authority of their husbands. Men, we're told, are the rulers, until inconvenient characters like Deborah show up, who judge the entire nation, lead military strategy, and rescue Israel. And suddenly the tune changes. Well, women can lead, maybe sometimes, but they're still under the authority of their husbands at home, because men are told to rule the household, and women never are. But that neat little framework falls apart when you actually start parsing out the Greek, because Paul never tells men to rule their wives. He tells overseers to rule their children, and when he does use the strongest Greek word for ruling the household, he applies it to women. If you've missed it, we've already done videos on headship, submission, framework. Men and women were given shared dominion to co-labor and bear God's image equally. Going back to the Genesis blueprint, what God intended before the fall of humanity messed everything up. We got people out here left and right fighting for the results of the fall, when given especially the fact that we've had a kinsman redeemer, we should be working to restore the blueprint. When Paul instructs men to rule the household, we're looking at a verse in 1 Timothy here. One that rules well his own house, having his children in subjugation with all gravity. 1 Timothy 3:4. Many argue that this verse cements men only as rulers of the home. The logic goes, if Paul tells overseers to rule their houses well, then men in general are the only ones called to lead the home, even though it specifies children here. This is an umbrella term that is used to lump the entire household together, and wives being part of their household are now under the rulership of their husbands. But is that really true? Let's take a closer look. In 1 Timothy, Paul is giving instruction to the overseers, those seeking a position of rank in leadership within that community. The Greek phrase rule well is proistimi, a word that means to stand before, to manage, to lead with care and diligence. It carries the connotations of stewardship and oversight, not domination. Paul's concern here was practical. If you're seeking a leadership role in the assembly, make sure you have your own stuff figured out at home first. This is a weighty calling, but notice that it's context specific. Paul isn't making the claim that all men everywhere are inherently rulers. He is describing the qualities necessary for a man who wants to become a shepherd in that community. Now, something that may surprise most people, especially those in my TikTok comment section, yes, Scripture does explicitly tell women to rule their home. I, therefore, that the younger woman marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. 1 Timothy 5:14. The Greek phrase, guide the house, is oikodespoteō, which literally means to rule a household. It is a compound word, okay meaning house or home, and despoteō meaning master, lord, or ruler. Paul chooses the strongest Greek word you could pick, available to describe household authority, and he applies it, shockingly, to the woman. In other words, according to Paul, the woman has been trusted with full managerial authority, oversight, and stewardship. Funny, isn't it, how when Paul gives this authority to men, translators choose to translate it as rule, and when this word is used for women, it is translated to guide. If you've been with me thus far in the journey of the Biblical Womanhood series, you will know that the translation bias is not a new phenomenon. So honestly, I can see how this is confusing to people. So let's talk data. The Greek word oikodespoteō does not whisper quiet help. This is an exceptionally strong term that lexicons translate as to rule a household or to be master of the home. Yet when authority is given to men, most translations will say ruler or head. And if you haven't seen my video all on headship, that might be a good place to go next. But when words of authority are given to women, somehow we get manage or guide. Translations committees didn't all of a sudden discover softer Greek terms. The language didn't shift before their very eyes. What they did was apply a softer shade, a pattern that is not new. But Paul wasn't being timid here. He deliberately used the same type of ruler language that is used to describe men in positions of authority. This beautifully echoes the picture of the Proverbs 31 woman of valor, not virtue, valor, who confidently oversees business ventures, manages the trades, her servants, and her family's welfare. And this is the best part. It's with her husband who is publicly praising her. She's not passively guiding from the sidelines. She is the OG CEO of the home, ruling her domain with wisdom. Scripture itself entrusted women with the rulership of the home. It's just our translations that have flinched. To underscore how important this word despoteō is, the root of oikodespoteō, let's look at where it shows up throughout the New Testament. It is a word used for earthly masters as well as God himself. Simeon prays, Lord despoteos, now let your servant depart in peace. The believers cry out, Lord despoteō, you made heaven and earth. Peter warns against false prophets, denying the master despoteō who brought them. When Paul uses the word oikodespoteō for women, he was not using a weaker, watered-down term that meant to guide. He uses the same root word that Scripture uses to describe the sovereign master of the universe. So if we're comfortable letting the word despoteō describe God's authority, but uncomfortable letting it describe a woman's authority over her own household, maybe the problem isn't the Greek. Maybe it's us. Put these verses together and what do we see? Men aspiring to be in leadership must demonstrate that they can stand before and manage their homes well. Women, especially wives and mothers, are entrusted to rule the home itself like the Proverbs 31 woman of valor. This is not a contradiction. It once again is a picture of shared responsibility. Paul never suggests that one person's authority in the home cancels out the others. Instead, he honors the distinct and overlapping realms where each is entrusted with weighty responsibility. To deny a woman's God-given authority over her own home is to deny Paul's very words. Some might push back here and say, but Genesis says that husbands will rule over their wives. I've addressed this more in depth in a previous video that talks about what actually happened during the fall and the fallout thereafter. Spoiler alert, it wasn't Eve who carries all of the blame. A majority of the responsibility rests squarely on Adam's shoulders. But I will give you a shortened, condensed version here. Genesis 3:16 was not a command. It was describing what happens in a fallen world. It was never the ideal. It was the result of sin, which is not what we should be aspiring to. And you shall desire your man, and he shall rule over you. Before sin, Ish, man, and Isha, woman, lived in harmony as a unified whole. After the fall, that unity fractured, replaced by struggle, competition, and control. The Hebrew word translated as desire here is teshuka, which carries the idea of turning towards someone with longing. And in a fallen world, this healthy desire becomes distorted. Instead of mutual honor and partnership, the blueprint that Yah gives us in imbalance and domination crept in. Insert our modern dilemma. So no, Genesis 3:16 is not a trump card for male rulership. It is a warning about sin's distortion, a distortion that is still being preached from the pulpits today. What Yah described as the tragic fallout of sin Too many have elevated into being a divine ideal, and in doing so, we have built entire theologies on brokenness, rather than focusing on Messiah's restoration. So many are fighting for the results of the fall, instead of aiming towards God's blueprint, which was always shared dominion. If God wanted men to rule over women, you would have found it in the creation account, but you don't. Instead, you find two image bearers given the responsibility to steward creation with care, bear his image, to walk it out in faith together. It was never about hierarchy. It was always about partnership. So we have to ask ourselves, do we want a marriage that reflects the fall, or do we want a marriage that mirrors God's design? The church should be teaching equality and unity, partnership and sacrificial love, not sanctifying domination. Neither 1 Timothy 3 nor 5 suggests that men or women are free to rule however they please. Authority in Scripture is always under Yahusha, Jesus, the Messiah. Period. End stop. That's where the authority flows from. He is the master of our lives. And for those of you who haven't seen the series on headship and what that actually means, I would urge you to look into that before you get all hot and bothered in my comment section. When men are faithful stewards of their families and women are ruling their household with care, the enemy has no foothold. That's the balance that Paul was after all along. Partnership and teamwork, rooted in the love that the Messiah modeled. So to answer the challenge, yes, the Bible does explicitly tell women to rule their home. Paul uses the strongest Greek household authority word to prove it. But you've been reading a translation of a translation with doctrine and bias baked in. Honestly, it's not really your fault. But my call would be do better. My question is always, does it mirror God's design, what he intended? And a power struggle within marriage doesn't fit that blueprint. The question then isn't, can women rule? We see it inside of marriage with the Proverbs 31 woman. We see it outside of marriage with Deborah ruling Israel. The question is, will we honor the fullness of Scripture? If you have other obscure verses that you're not sure what it means in relation to men and women, drop that in the comment section down below, and I'll see about doing an upcoming video on the topic. Don't forget, I have that free guide in the description box down below, studying Scripture in its original language, which will give you a framework around Hebrew, Greek, some notes on Aramaic, and free study tools that you can use with step-by-step instructions to figure out how to start studying the text in its own language without needing a seminary degree. My book, You Are the Daughter of the King, is currently being written and will hopefully be released in February. There is also a link to all the information that I covered today in written form for those who prefer to go back and reference it, or if you prefer to share it with somebody that prefers to read over watching a video, you can find that as a free downloadable in the description box as well. Until next time, remember to test everything and hold fast to what is good. May Yah bless and keep you. May he make his light shine upon you and give you that peace that truly surpasses all understanding. I will catch you on that flippity flop. Shalom.